Well, what about our universe and the precise settings of its physical laws that keep things in order? What they call fine-tuning. Cosmological physicist Frank Tipler explains.
Fine-tuning in physics refers to the observed fact, that were we to modify the constants of nature just slightly, life would never appear in this universe.
But of course, materialist scientists claim they have a better answer.
There's an obvious and easy naturalistic explanation in the form of the cosmological multiverse.
The multiverse acknowledges that the conditions necessary to make life in this universe are incredibly improbable. But it posits the existence of multiple billions of other universes, and we just happen to be in that lucky universe.
The existence of the Earth and the properties that made it possible for biological life to develop depend on a very fine balance between the so-called constants of nature. If they were more than slightly different, either planets like the Earth would not occur, or the chemical processes necessary for life would not take place. One might take this as evidence for a divine creator, but an alternative explanation is what is known as the multiverse. The idea is that there are many possible universes. Only in the small number of universes that are suitable will intelligent beings develop and be able to ask the question, why is the universe so carefully designed?
Keep in mind that there's no evidence that these other universes actually exist.
There are no experimentally tested laws of physics telling us that these other universes exist. No evidence for leprechauns, no evidence for unicorns, no evidence for the existence of other universes with different values of these fundamental constants.
And there's still another problem with the multiverse explanation.
The new mechanisms that have been proposed as possible ways of generating new universes themselves require fine-tuning. So in order to explain the fine-tuning, you have to posit prior universe-generating mechanisms that themselves require fine-tuning.
And so, in the end, you're left right where you started.
You're a man looking at the world through a keyhole, and you've spent your whole life trying to widen that keyhole, to see more, to know more. And now, on hearing that it can be widened in ways you can't imagine, you reject the possibility.
No, I reject it because I do not believe in fairy tales about chakras or energy or the power of belief. There is no such thing as spirit. We are made of matter and nothing more. You're just another tiny, momentary speck within an indifferent universe.
You think too little of yourself.
Oh, you think you see through me, do you? Well, you don't. But I see through you!
Do to me?
I pushed your astral form out of your physical form.
What's in that tea? Psilocybin? LSD?
It's just tea. With a little honey.
What just happened?
For a moment, you entered the astral dimension.
What?
A place where the soul exists apart from the body.
Why are you doing this to me?
To show you just how much you don't know. Open your eyes.
His heart rate is getting dangerously high.
He looks all right to me. You think you know how the world works? You think that this material universe is all there is? What is real? What mysteries lie beyond the reach of your senses? At the root of existence, mind and matter meet. Thoughts shape
reality. This universe is only one of an infinite number. Worlds without end. Some benevolent and life-giving. Others filled with malice and hunger. Dark places where powers older than time lie, ravenous and waiting. Who are you in this vast multiverse, Mr. Strange? Have you seen that before in a gift shop?
Teach me.
No.
Robin, for a theist, does the new scientific idea of many universes, a multiverse, destroy the power of the fine-tuning argument?
I would say definitely not. Even though it's a very interesting idea, the multiverse hypothesis, if you actually look at the currently most fashionable versions of it, it looks like the multiverse generator itself would need to be well designed to produce a single life-sustaining universe. Hence, that hypothesis just kicks the problem of design up one level. Let me give you some examples of how this works. If you look at the inflationary superstring version of the multiverse hypothesis, there has to be a mechanism to generate the bubble universes. There has to be a mechanism, which is given by inflationary cosmology. There has to be a mechanism that gives those bubble universes mass energy. There has to be a mechanism to vary the constants of nature in those multiple universes.
So all of those things have to be achieved in order to have the life that we have now.
A single life-sustaining universe. Further, it doesn't explain, even though you can get a variation of constants from physical constants, or just like things like the force strengths or the cosmological constants, which are fundamental numbers in physics. Even though you can get a variation from universe to universe, it does not explain what I call the fine-tuning of the laws. That is, you have to have just the right laws in order for there to be life, such as the law of gravity. That's already built into the inflationary superstring scenario and doesn't vary from universe to universe.
And then finally, one more thing that a multiverse must overcome if it's going to be an adequate explanation of fine-tuning is that it should not itself require fine-tuning, and that would just shift the problem up a level. I've already given an example of this in the previous discussion, but consider that even Sean Carroll says that the probability of inflation occurring in a universe where you have the initial conditions chosen at random is about 1 chance in 10 to the 66 millionth power. Certainly, if you just look at the history of inflation, there was a lot of ways in which the theory was originally described in ways that wouldn't work. So you can see that it requires fine-tuning just by looking at the history of inflation proposals.
I know some physicists have suggested that the multiverse itself would require a certain level of fine-tuning. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yes, I would, and it requires a level of technical detail that's difficult to get into. What often gets missed is that in order to get that inflation to work properly, the inflation potential has to be highly designed. If you look at just kind of generic potentials that would drive that, or to try and drive that, it won't actually drive inflation, or it won't produce the size of universe that we see. So even the inflationary mechanism seems to be fine-tuned. In fact, there is a fairly prominent cosmologist, Paul Steinhardt, who was working with, doing very, research into this area back in the 80s when it was people were looking at inflation. And part of what convinced him that the inflationary mechanism isn't right is just how finely tuned it is to get it to work. So, I didn't really address that in here, but for even the inflationary mechanism requires quite a bit of fine-tuning.
John Rood submitted a question. He says, in order for there to be a multiverse, would there need to be a universe-creating mechanism? If so, could we theorize that a universe-creating mechanism also requires fine-tuning?
So I think the answer to that is yes. It's not that there has to be a mechanism. It's just if there's not a mechanism, then each individual multiverse each individual universe in your multiverse is a separate postulate in your theory, right? And another universe, and another universe, and then Occam's razor is going to kill it. Okay, if you have to make the sort of numbers you get out of fine-tuning suggest that the number of universes you need in order for anyone to win the lottery is enormous. So if each one of those is a separate postulate, then you're in big trouble. So I think the only real viable multiverse candidates are the ones where there's a generator. So then the question is the generator itself fine-tuned? If it's based on inflation, if this idea about how the universe expands really fast in the earlier stages, if you want to use that to make a multiverse, you have to worry about the fine-tuning of inflation. And there are a lot of worries about the fine-tuning of inflation. You don't get that for free. You don't get the multiverse that comes out of that for free.
So it eliminates a little bit of the evidence for fine-tuning, but I don't think it significantly weakens it.
The difference being the universe generator in the multi-universes in your theistic explanation has to be each one of the elements of the generating parameters have to be fine-tuned themselves.
Right.
Lizzie asked a question, can you give a simple analogy for the inflationary problem that means the multiverse requires fine-tuning? And so the example I would give is that the inflation is in a very high potential, and then when it comes down, it's going to go to a low potential. And so the example would be you put a ball on top of a hill. Ball rolls down the hill. That's just simple. There's nothing fancy about that. If I now need to get that ball into a hole that's up another hill, I have to design the hill so that the ball gets the right speed and it goes in the right path and ends up dropping in the hole. Inflation kind of has a potential like that. It's not just let's roll downhill. It's got to be the right kind of hill that doesn't go too fast. It doesn't slope too steeply. It doesn't steep or it's not too shallow. It comes out. It's got this. The low state is out around, not at the center. It's just a very weird looking hill, if you will. And so, hopefully that's a little bit helpful. But it's got to go from a high potential to a low potential. But it's not just let's roll downhill. It's got to roll downhill and hit a number of balls, and it can't go too fast and it can't go too slow. And then it's got to get up the other side and drop in the hole with just the right velocity. That's kind of an analogy of what you might have to do, except it's actually a lot more fine-tuned than that.